One more happy. Happy no border wall. Happy government shutdown. Our leaders have failed us once again. Border wall. Why do I want a border wall? Well, it's because I guess I'm not a humanitarian. Wrong! I am a humanitarian. That's the reason why I want a border wall. And we're going to go back to 1960 for just 1 second. This is why our whole country is just aching for socialism. In fact, no, we need to go back a little bit further. We don't realize when this whole communist way of thinking started. Way back, let's say in the 40s. Christians, people of God, supposedly, that were against communism, because communism is an atheist regime. They take away all religions. In Nazism, as long as you put the Nazi party first, you could have your religion. But they're all socialist. National Socialist Workers' Party, national meaning Germany. It does not mean, national does not mean Nazi, it means the Party of Germany, Socialist Workers, Socialist, USSR, United Soviet Socialist Republic, Socialist. All communism is socialism. Get that through your head. Even Nazism, they're brothers. Hitler thought like Stalin. They were basically almost the same person. But you need to know history to know this. Well, the reason why we're so broken today is because it did start about the 40s. You see, FDR was very fond of fascism and sent the brain trust over to Italy to learn all about fascism. That fascism in Italy was okay with the Jews. They weren't going off to kill the Jews. And Mussolini did some good things, actually, until they killed him and hung him upside down like a piece of meat and then dragged him through the streets. But Hitler was totally against the Jews. He did the whole Holocaust thing. He was a New World Order guy. He wanted to take the world and have one-party rule. No more borders. A socialist system all over the world. That's what he wanted to do, is spread socialism. And of course, the USSR wanted to do that too, little by little, and soon they could just knock down that wall, because the wall would be around the entire planet. And that's what we're headed for. Socialism, communism is really atheistic. And people who supposedly believed in God and who were against these things, leaders that people trusted, accepted positions as presidents and CEOs of communist organizations in this country, communist labor unions, Hollywood, presidents of Hollywood unions that were communist. So what happened was Hollywood started to repackage socialism into their movies, this totalitarian one world order idea, into the movies, into the media, and it spread. And we voted these people into office. We funded these people because they were supposedly Christian. They supposedly were people of God, and they would not rat the country out. But the truth is, they ratted the country out. They accepted those positions, and you wouldn't accept a position in an organization that is designed to take down America. That's what the Soviet Union's goal was to take down America and make it a part of the entire Soviet Socialist Republic. Well, it won't be Soviet, and I don't think Putin is that much of a danger. Not as much as China. China is much more of a danger, as they're killing all their own people. They don't care how many people they killed. They're They're polluting all the rivers between India and in Africa, and I believe in Sri Lanka now, and China. They're planning to put 1,200 more coal-burning power plants that have no filter. In this country, we have regulations. We have clean-burning coal, natural gas. It burns clean. We've never been cleaner at this time in history, yet they keep selling us the idea that humans are harming the earth and there must be less humans. That's what globalism wants. That's what communism had to do. First they lowered the population by killing them off, torturing them with gangs until they killed themselves. A lot of them killed themselves, and a lot of them were killed. And there were execution quotas every day in these countries. So they're getting us to lower the population of the earth. And the thing is in this country, when people used to heat their homes by coal, they used to have to put newspaper in the windows, and the soot would come up through the house. It was extremely dirty. And there was a haze in the city from all the soot. And now there isn't. See, today we have a cleaner environment than we actually did then, because now we're burning clean. And now we actually are doing something about pollution. We care, we're recycling. People don't realize that there's been a big change. And America is the one that's following the rules. It's these other countries that aren't. So it doesn't matter what we do. If carbon is the problem, then you need to speak to these countries. But the idea is to tax America to death. And this is why we want the wall. This all ties in together why we want the wall. Tax the country to death. Fill the country with people who want big government. People who are dependent on the government. Oh, but this is a country of immigrants. Yes, it's a country of immigrants, but when the immigrants came through Ellis Island, you had to A, have a place to live. Someone was going to sponsor you. B, have a place to work. You had to have employment. C, you had to be free of disease. You were detained at Ellis Island until they were satisfied that you were not sick. And if you were sick, you either were detained until you were well or you were sent back to your country. How does that sound? Does that sound like ICE deporting people? Kind of does. So, and that was just because they were sick. Even if they had a job or a place to stay, they were detained if they were sick. Remember in The Godfather? The Godfather was detained because he was sick in Ellis Island. That's what happened. So I know my grandfather would have hung himself if he took public assistance. He would never do that. He had too much pride. He would just go back to Italy. He had too much pride. He would never come to this country. He came to this country for work. He intended to go back to Italy. And saying, well, the people coming to this country, that's what they want to do. No. There was more jobs than there were Americans to fill the jobs. There was a surplus of jobs. That's why we had people in to fill these lower level jobs. And unfortunately, a lot of Americans are out of work and are on the streets because immigrants who are coming over are taking jobs for a quarter of the wage, and everybody who gets over that border gets 100% on the dole. Not you, not me. We can't do this. Maybe if we're born white, that has something to do with it. Somehow they see us of privilege, or they just look at us and say, you're Americans, because there's a lot of Black people that are on the streets of, most of them are Black on the streets of LA. And are they privileged? I think they're a minority. I'm not sure, but they've lost their jobs and they can't get entry-level jobs. Even when I entered the workforce, there were entry-level positions, but no, you couldn't move up. You were not allowed to move up unless you had a 4-year degree. You couldn't work from the bottom up. Part of the argument of the socialist kids today, and this started in the 60s. In the 60s, you see, things had changed enough that the communists had started running everything. The media had already, that's it. They'd taken over the media. They'd taken over Hollywood. Everything you were fed had a communist twist to it. And it started in the 40s. FDR was just crazy about fascism, which is a form of socialism. Okay, and he also appointed an open member of the KKK to the Supreme Court, Democrat FDR, and because he wanted the Democrats in the South to sign the New Deal, he agreed to not outlaw lynching in the South. That's how evil this man was. He also had the warning on his desk. It was right there on his desk, and my cousin, who was in the Peace Corps, and he was a Democrat, died in the World Democrat, would never be anything but a Democrat. And he's one of those intellectuals, and he's a professor. He said that FDR had that right on his desk, that Pearl Harbor was going to be bombed. He let it happen so he can get us into war. And he also allowed the Depression to last as long as it did. He could have ended it sooner. He didn't. He kept people dependent on the government to grow government. You see, it started then. That's why John F. Kennedy may be one of the reasons why he was shot. But, you know, with all his failings and all his sexual dalliances, which they say was probably brought on by the drugs that he was being given. He was given these crazy drugs, Dr. Feelgood, and it upped your sexual drive. He already had this high sexual drive because his father told him that the mark of a man is how many women he could run around with. But these drugs made your sexual drive go through the roof. But he was still a great president. He was still an American president. He said, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. And every socialist in this country, there is no way that man would ever be elected president saying such words. To actually pull yourself up with your own bootstraps and work hard. The socialists today, the young people, are complaining about minimum wage. Minimum wage, how it's not high enough. It's not a living wage. You're right. It's never been a living wage. It's been crap for a long time. It was $3.35 in the 80s. $3.35, and people were giving people a nickel to a dime raises. I mean, my poor mother was working to death for literally a nickel and dime raise starting when she re-entered the workforce, $3.35 an hour, as low as they could possibly pay her. And what's the reason why the wages are depressed? Well, because Ted Kennedy, in 1965, they opened immigration again, except they passed welfare at the same time. And he allowed people from other countries to come over to take the jobs of Americans at a lower wage. So the Americans were fired, and these people with green cards were hired. And so what did he get? The Democrat Party got voters. Democrat Party got stronger. And that was the Democrat Party that was still in the KKK. LBJ was a member of the KKK. The Kennedys bought a house in Palm Beach that was segregated. And if you were Black or a Jew, you could not own property in that part of Palm Beach until Trump bought Mar-a-Lago and sued the city and ended segregation. So what do you know about that? And we know about Senator Robert Byrd, who died in 2011, was the grand exalted cyclops of the KKK. So the Democrat Party is very steeply involved in the KKK. They are very steeply involved in racism and depressing wages. They say when they get office, they're going to raise their wages. No, they don't. They destroyed the country when they opened up immigration and allowed for welfare. You can come over here and you didn't have to have a job. You could get onto welfare. You could get a green card and you would work for less of a wage, and they could fire or not hire the American and hire the foreigner for a depressed wage. So the socialists are screaming that they're working so hard. They don't even know what work is. Now you can just sit down all day at your job and you literally don't have to work. That their wages, their minimum wage, is not living. Well, it hasn't been a living wage for a very long time. And that started in the 60s. Before that, if you got a minimum wage job, you can work yourself up to the top. You didn't need to even go to college. There would be no need for student debt, student loans, and those debts that you can never pay. No need. You don't even need to go to a trade school. You could go into a job in an entry-level position and work your way up. Learn the system from the ground up. Just work very hard. That was the same way when Rome was at its height. That's what they did, actually. Very similar, except when they accepted immigrants in, they didn't accept a flood of immigrants in until the end. That's what happened is that they started accepting lots of immigrants, and the Roman citizens couldn't afford, they were highly taxed, couldn't afford to have their own children. Yet they were paying for all the immigrants because the immigrants were voting for the people in government. You see, that's how Rome was destroyed. This is just history repeating all over again. But it used to be that if you did come in from another country, you had to work for someone, you had to work for a Roman citizen for 10 years. You needed to learn the language, you needed to learn the custom, borders, language, culture. You had to learn borders, language, culture. Okay, they had control of their borders. You had to learn the language and the culture so you could be prosperous in that country. And after 10 years, if you got married, you got citizenship right away. Otherwise, you'd have to wait 20 years. But people, once they got citizenship, they prized it and they would hang it on the wall. And in fact, the reason why we know so much about this is because of the ruins of Pompeii. You see, anything made out of wood was charred, so it was preserved. And people hung these on their walls. In fact, people who came in from as far away as Syria were proud to be Roman citizens. They adopted the culture and they became wealthy. Now, isn't that the American dream? Isn't that the way it should be? Maybe it doesn't have to be 10 years, but there must be a desire to adopt the culture of the country. And doing it that way didn't depress wages because everybody worked from the ground up. If you're a Roman citizen, you probably had an education of some kind and could start at a higher level. So the socialists want no border and they want a one world government and they want the government to pay for them. But anytime socialism comes in, what they do is they kill off a certain amount of the population. Now, Bill Ayers stated we needed a revolution and 30 million people needed to die. This is what Stalin said. Alinsky said this. Mao did this. He killed 45 million of his own people in 4 years, 78 million total. That was just amazing. And in a very short period of time, Pol Pot, decided he went to school in France and decided that he hated America, and anybody who was pro-West was killed. And my communist revolutionary boyfriend, instead of being aghast at hearing that, he said, well, he's right. They thought American. They had to die. You had to get rid of those people. That's how dangerous these people think. And these people are working in our society, working amongst us, and somehow think that that's okay. Now, we're destroying our country. And within 5 years, Texas, because there's a lot of undocumented people that came in over the border that are not voting age yet. But within 5 years' time, in Texas will be voting age. And Texas will be blue. We will never see a Republican president again. We will never see a Libertarian president. The borders will fall. That's it. We will have an unelected body of government. The Democrats think because they've been so loyal to these people, these globalists who are extremely high up there. They are the elite. They are above the media. They are above Hollywood. And you hear them speak when you hear Prince Philip say he wants to come back as a disease and kill 3/4 of the planet off. Or when Prince Charming Williams, the golden boy that we all, can't wait for him to become king, actually opened his mouth and said the world population has to lower and we're going to start with Africa. And a month later, Harry gets engaged to a girl that's half of African descendant of African slaves, to kind of save the day, so you can say that a royal family is not racist. The Queen would never say such things. But with Diana dying, it was his father and his grandfather. His grandfather took a pivotal role in the raising of that boy, not the Queen, because she's busy being the Queen, and he's, his grandfather and doesn't have all the duties of the Queen. And I think kind of poisoned his mind, because their mother did die. They were at a relatively young age. But this is the voice of the globalists. They need to lower the world population because all these people are using up the resources. We're polluting the land. They need to lower the population. And the way to do it is to invent something like climate change. That will be for another video. Please don't get angry at me for saying this until you hear the argument that I will pose. And then you can argue with me. But this is what's happening. And so it's more than the drugs that are flooding over the border. Not every truck is inspected. Not every vehicle that comes over the border is inspected. There are warehouses lined up all over the border, filled to the top with drugs, and the dangerous drug of fentanyl, and even a speck on your finger. You take that into your body, and you will die. It's so dangerous. All these drugs are coming over the border. The drug cartels run all the states, Mexican states, right on the border. Now, may I ask you, say, what? Okay, 100%, not 100% of the people coming over the border are bad. Of course not. But a lot of the people that are coming over the border are bringing drugs over the border. MS-13, that fantasy gang, I think Disney should probably make a movie called The MS-13 Boys, because the Democrats think that they're totally harmless or they don't exist. So they should make a little cartoon out of them. What are cartoons? Some kind of computer animated thing, like Avatar, except I don't know what color to paint them, because remember Avatar was blue. I don't know. They might kill brutally, but we can see them in a different light. It's interesting that the criminals, if you keep up on the crime that's coming over the border, they kill mostly people with Hispanic names. They're killing other Hispanics, whether they be legal or illegal. They're killing them. They're killing the African Americans. They're killing minorities. The initiation into the gang is to kill someone. So I don't understand why the Democrats aren't against this. I do not understand. They need to meet some of these gang members. They need to see what they do to the bodies. They need to talk to the parents of the children. See those parents and families and friends that will be separated from their loved ones who've been killed by MS-13 forever, or because of drug overdoses, because of the drugs that are coming over this border. They're separated forever, not a little small period of time. They're separated forever. And one of the reasons why we separate these children over the border, here's another problem. There's sex trafficking. That these children and women, people are coming over the border. You cannot pay your smuggler to take you over the border because you need someone to bring you up. You get into sex trafficking, you get into MS-13. This is the way you pay back these people if you don't have the money. So they go into sex slavery. So little children, adults and little children get into sex slavery. So do the Democrats know this? Do the Democrats know that by having an open border, 93% of the women and children crossing the border are raped, according to Doctors Without Borders? That's a fact, and Doctors Without Borders is not a political organization in any way, shape, or form. This is the statistic. If we give them people in South, there's 400 million people in South America. And how many billions of people are there in the world? How many billions of people would like to come to America who, for whatever reason, whether it be economic or they just want to live in America? There's many reasons why people want to come to America. And they all funnel through at the open border. What do you think is going to happen to this nation? Of course, if you care about pollution, what do you think is going to happen with this nation? Do you think there's going to be a lot more plastics? We're going to destroy all the plastics. You know, we're banning plastic straws, yet the lids of those coffee cups are all plastic. And we've got plastic over everything, every seal, every non-tampering device, everything I look at, it's all plastic. But you ban plastic straws. It's kind of like that old saying, you save pennies and you throw away dollars. Except today it would be a much higher amount. What do you think is going to happen to this country? We don't have enough doctors. In fact, people aren't going into the medical profession anymore. They're not. They're going to go into the business side of the medical profession, run into the insurance side, because that's where the money is. It's no longer, and you can get sued. You work yourself to death, work 24 hours a day, and when you're a resident, when you get out of medical school, not everybody can be a doctor as far as intelligence goes. It's only a handful of people. And to be really good as a doctor, I have some doctors that are really crappy, some that are really good. And those crappy ones got through. So there's really a handful of doctors that are really going to help you out there. And there's still, even with the crappy ones, there's still a handful of doctors. So we're going to lower the standards of doctors because we're going to have so many people in this country that are going to need medical care. And we have free medical care. And we have 30 million people now that are not covered. And we have more than, they say it's 30 million illegal aliens in this country. It's a lot more than the 11 study came out. It's about 30 million. So you got to think of that. And you got to think of housing. And you got to think of sewage. And of course, if all these people coming in are on the dole or getting paid under the table, a quarter of the wage, why ever hire an American citizen again? There will be no point. There'll be too many people who can get welfare and work for a quarter of the wage. These are some things to think about. And what about the children that are alive? Are we going to promote more abortions because we're going to reach a limit in this country, just like they do in China, and they have forced abortions in China, and they have forced abortions in North Korea? You know, they hit the pregnant women in the stomach until they have an abortion. And that's one of the wonderful things that regime does. And you're going to tell that to the Muslims who have about 8 to 10 kids each. Are you going to tell them they can only have one? Or are you only going to tell people who are not Muslim, Judeo-Christian, or an atheist, you can only have one child? And you're going to make an exception for the Muslims? Or is the law going to be across the board the same for everyone? Of course, there's the judicial system who is letting people out the door who've committed crimes, serious crimes. Even in my town, they had it in the newspaper that they let go illegal aliens who committed crimes because they didn't want ICE to pick them up. So that's what we want. We want the criminals to stay because we know that the Democrats know that the criminals will vote for the Democrats. And these criminals, do you think that they're going to be a benefit or a help to their community? If you care about the community of illegals in this country or the minorities in this country, when they primarily hurt the minorities in this country. So no, the Democrats, you do not care about minorities or other illegals. There is a group of illegals that I'm sure are very good. And there are some, as everyone knows on the planet, everyone knows this story. If you've ever read a book or seen a movie or a TV show, how do we know that other than the fact that we have people snuggling cocaine and heroin up their butts and bringing these drugs across the border, and that the drug cartels are making $69 billion, I'm sure more than that at this point. And of course, people are dying in this country of it. Other than we know that crime is coming over the border, it makes me wonder who's getting the kickback to all this money. Are the Democrats getting a kickback from the drug cartels? I think that's one to look into. I just thought of that. I think they're probably getting a kickback because they want this. But they also know they will vote for them. Look, we will give you free stuff. You can work under the table. We'll pay you 100% on the dole. And as we know, as of at least 4 years ago, there's $120 billion being sent out of this country by undocumented people in this country who are working under the table and getting 100% on the dole. So they're getting a lot of extra money. So we know that crime comes over the border. And then when you come in and you get 100% paid on the dole and are working under the table, that's also a crime. It's a crime to come over the border legally. That's a crime. Another crime is actually taking from the taxpayers, from people who are very hungry in this country. These people are coming over. They're not on the streets and they're not homeless. And that caravan, it only had women and children on the front line just in case the army shot back at them. Just in case there was tear gas or violence, it'd be the women and children that got hit. We would look really horrible. But these men, they left all their women and children in Honduras and Guatemala, all these countries. They claim they're escaping, seeking asylum, they're escaping violence and tyranny and whatever. So they leave their women and children back in this country. Isn't that a crime? Isn't it a crime that 93% of the women running over the border and children are getting raped? Isn't that a crime? Shouldn't that stop? See, if they came in illegally, then they would fill out papers and they would come in the right way and they would bypass the coyotes and the smugglers and they wouldn't get raped, right? And if you're running from the law from any country on this planet, a lot of people coming in through South America, through Panama and Costa Rica. These people could be escaping from their own countries because they've committed a crime, and they're coming here to America. Do you ever think of that? Where's the first, if you've seen a movie or a TV show or read a book or read anything, what do criminals do? The first thing criminals do, they run for the border. They're not seeking asylum in the country right next to them, which is what they're supposed to do. They're coming to America because they know America will give them 100% on the dole. They'll work under the table, and the Democrats want them here because they want their votes, and they'll live in really nice communities. This is why they want them. The destruction of this country started with FDR. He started bringing in socialism, and he did that little bargain with the KKK, with Jim Crow South. They wanted to keep lynching people. Okay? He wanted his New Deal. So why did he want the New Deal signed? Because he can get all the poor people and all the black voters, give them all jobs, and they'll all vote for you, the New Deal. But to do it, he allowed them to lynch anybody they wanted to in the South. It isn't like, I'm bringing jobs to you. I'm giving you a job because I want to better your life. I'm improving your cities. Every city in America that has high crime, where the people are suffering, are all run by Democrats. Okay? So it isn't like they're helping you in any way. Even if the New Deal gave you a job, the New Deal actually meant the lives of thousands of African descendants of slaves, Americans descendants of slaves, and people from Europe that were not considered white, like Greeks and Italians. Southern Italians were not considered white. Those people were lynched too. So every job in the New Deal, you could say, cost someone their life. And the socialists will say, your life will tell you that thousands of people in these third world countries are dying so you can live. Well, your socialist party started that when you brought socialism to this country, when your hero, FDR, brought socialism to this country. The people, and you're for minorities. Oh yeah, you're for the descendants of slaves, aren't you? And minorities, aren't you? That's why you're bringing people into this country who are killing other minorities. So you don't care about them. You don't care about what the Democrat Party did to the slaves. You don't care that the Democrat Party they turned socialist. And this is the price. The New Deal was the first form of socialism and Social Security. That's it. Socialism, the blood of thousands of descendants of African slaves, paid for the socialism that came into this country, that's killing our country today and destroyed the African American family in the 60s with welfare, which demanded that the father couldn't be in the home and that the father couldn't get a good paying job because Ted Kennedy opened it up to the world to come in, get on welfare, get a green card, and get these jobs at lower wages. So he lowered the wages for all the black people, all the minorities already here, and all you socialists living today that are complaining that your wages are so low and your debt is so high. That's it. That's what did it. So not having this wall is a crime, And there's no hope now, because no, Trump will not get reelected. We have no hope if we don't re-elect Trump and possibly elect libertarians, anybody who will vote for Trump's agenda to save this country, to save the lives of the people who are dying of drugs, who are dying in sex trafficking, who are getting raped through sex trafficking. What else? Criminals are coming through the border from South America and all over the world. They're escaping to get away from authority. That's the first place you go. That's why you know anybody who comes over the border, if they're not checked, if we don't know who they are, could be escaping from the law. That's a piece of the puzzle that nobody says on TV or the radio. I listen to everybody, and I've never heard anyone say this. And there was just recently a person who was taken in by a very humanitarian family. They took him in, they clothed him, they fed him. He made a copy of the key. He came back at night and raped their 6-year-old daughter. This just happened. I hear this news every day, news just like this every single day. This is not a 1 in a million chance. Happens all the time. You just have to keep up with the news. So if you're a humanitarian, you build that wall so all these people who do want to come over can come over safely. They apply. We find out that when they come to the border, they're waving the American flag because they have the American spirit and they want to live the American dream. Okay, those people we want in this country. Okay. We don't want the criminals. We don't want the drugs. So the Democrats are willing to sacrifice our children on the altar of what? For their own unelected power. They want to be an unelected body of government like the EU and be in power forever, have their wages raised anytime they want. That's what they think. Once it's this one world order, the people at the top who are orchestrating this globalism, the elite of the elites, they're going to have to step down in one form or another. And somebody else will take their place running things. The Democrats are too stupid to realize this. The socialists are too stupid to realize what socialism really is. Socialism does not work. It has never worked. And I saw that video of Chile. My communist revolutionary boyfriend, ex, thank God, played for me this videotape. I think there was 2 videotapes. It was in black and white, and how it worked in Chile. And like people lined up for the podium and they talked and they carried jars and they carried placards. And somehow within this 6-hour-long saga, it was 8 hours long. I had to watch the whole, he made me watch the whole thing. He screamed at me if I stopped watching. He was really crazy. Showing me that, see, socialism worked in Chile. No. Look closer at that video and look closely at every country that has ever adopted socialism and what happens to it. Anyway, I'm signing off now, and I pray to God that the Senate is called back in to make a vote to save this country. Because if the Democrats, or even if you are a Democrat, save America, be a John F. Kennedy Democrat who says a rising tide lifts all boats. Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. Be that kind of Democrat. But you know what? Don't even be a Democrat. Change the name, because it's the party of the KKK. It's the party of slavery. It's the party of Jim Crow South. And it is the party who refused women the right to vote. And you know the reason why the Democrats refused to give women the right to vote? Why, you women? It's like, why do the women vote Democrat? It makes no sense. Do you know the reason why they refused women the right to vote, the Democrats? You know why? because they wanted to vote Federalist. It was a different party that doesn't exist. They didn't want to vote Democrat. So the Democrats didn't give them the right to vote. You see, that's why they want an open border, because they're 100% sure that these people who want big government, who want to live off the dole and get paid under the table, will vote for them. That's the only people they care about, and they're willing to sacrifice every man, woman, and child in this country, regardless of your race, religion, ethnicity, creed, melanin content in your skin. They're willing to sacrifice you for the sake of power. Let's hope somebody saves this country. If they don't come to their senses, we've lost our country. Good night, everyone. See you again.